if you were born in 1957, you know that this is Green Onions by Booker T and the MGs. You just know it. Great tune. Anyway, we're sticking with callers on this big breaking news day. Most eyes are on North Korea, also the Inspector General report, and events all around the world. Volcanoes in Guatemala and Hawaii. Who knows what's going to break loose next? Anyway, let's go to Peter in Washington now, who wants to talk about the MacArthur Plan and North Korea. Go ahead, Peter.
Yes, you can hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, fine. Yes. General MacArthur did not allow American businesses in there. He wanted the Japanese to rebuild it themselves. He also said, what we need is really 10,000 Christian missionaries. Now, I don't think Kim, assuming everything is right, I don't think that Kim Jong-un should allow any American companies in there without having it first checked with President of the United States, because this has to be trust, and this time there's not going to be any betrayals like was done in Libya or was done by Franklin Delano Roosevelt against Chiang Kai-shek. There's not, and that's the only thing. And Christian missionaries, this country's too weak to make it just Christian missionaries, but I just would hope that the president of North Korea will allow Christian missionaries to come in, and no other religion. And I'm not for any kind of globalism, none whatsoever, except for the spread.
Thanks, Peter. It's interesting that the elites in North Korea, they actually do have schools that are run by Christians, South Korean Christians. It's hard to believe, but these Christian teachers aren't allowed to proselytize, but they kind of lead by example. So they can't invite people to go to church, but by their example, they have been showing, this is now going on more than a generation, the Christian teachers from South Korea have been actually teaching the elites and trying to sort of prepare the path for an eventual dropping of their hermit kingdom status. If there's any group that is going to open up North Korea, it's going to be the South Koreans. Other than Trump forcing the deal, forcing the wheel of history to turn, once a deal is made, it's going to be South Koreans fanning out into North Korea. It's not going to be American companies and Americans or pale-faced American Christian missionaries. The Christian missionaries that you speak of will be Koreans, and they're very strong. So I am cautiously optimistic that something very momentous can happen, but it's not going to be Apple and Ford going into North Korea. It's going to be South Korea that reunites the country. If it can be done, it's going to be the South Koreans. Can we take another caller now? Let's see. Anthony, the Bronx, New York City. Go ahead, Anthony.
Hey, Matt. How are you? I always look forward to when you're on. I especially like your knowledge and take on the left's alliance with Islam and their plan to take down the West. Anyway, I know you don't have much time, but I wanted some practical advice. I live in a neighborhood where there is a growing presence of Muslims. I see women with hijabs, burqas, and it's growing little by little. A few years ago, there was even a guy arrested in his apartment in my neighborhood for supporting ISIS. And I feel so powerless to see this happen in my neighborhood. At some point, there were very little Muslims in Europe, and little by little they started infiltrating, and now we see what the problem is, how big it is. What can, besides spreading the word and being aware, is there any practical advice you have on how one can deal with the hopeless and helpless feelings that come with an Islamic takeover?
Yeah, it's a difficult problem because what they do is they set up like a cell with a hard shell around it that is almost impenetrable, and then they just expand the shell outward. They drive people out with the call to prayer and the, scary things like women wearing hijabs and niqabs and burqas. This tends to drive the non-believers out of an area until it becomes fully like a fortified zone of Sharia law. The important thing, I think, to try to proselytize or to teach Americans is that, and this is what Americans fail to grasp, Sharia law is not like Jewish rabbinical law or Catholic doctrine. Sharia law applies to everybody who is under the control of an Islamic area. There are laws under Sharia for how Christians and Jews have to behave or face violent consequences. This is something that Americans don't understand. Sharia is for everybody. It's not just for Muslims. And it's important to also teach Americans that Muslims are taught that anything goes when you're dealing with non-Muslims. So if lying about Sharia law helps to spread Sharia law, they will lie about it. And this is when, the biggest problem still is that Americans take Muslims at face value. When somebody says, oh, I'm a moderate Muslim, I don't believe in that crazy stuff, then you have to say, then do you believe in all of the Quran? Do you believe that all of the Quran is the revealed word of Allah through Muhammad? They're either going to say yes or no. If they say yes, that means they agree with slavery of infidels, with raping infidel girls as a way of terrorizing and demoralizing the non-believers. It means the whole thing. It's the whole package. If they say no, I disagree with the part of the Quran, then they've just become apostates. So the key is to force them onto one side or the other, while remembering that they will lie. But what they won't do is state publicly that they are against elements of the Quran and the Hadiths. So by putting them on the spot, you're either going to draw them out as a potential apostate or force them to admit that, yes, actually, slavery is a part of the institution of Islam, as is, a perpetual conquest. Jihad is not just some spiritual thing. This is actually a lie spread by, these taqiyya Muslims, that jihad just means a spiritual a conquest inside your own soul. That's BS. Going back 1,400 years, jihad means violent conquest. It means spreading Islam by the sword, or by treachery, or by lies. And it's actually almost more effective for them to do a jihad by what they call hijra, which is jihad by migration, setting up these fortified cells inside of the enemy camp, the Dar al-Harb, that's the world of the enemy, until each little part that's conquered by Muslims becomes part of the Ummah, the worldwide Islamic, the world of submission, the Dar al-Islam. So yeah, we need to tell people that it's not benign. This is a cancer within us. Just like in the 1930s, if somebody had said, oh, he's a good Nazi, let him set up a Nazi temple, it obviously would have been, laughed at. And when the German-American Bund did have rallies, they were seen as, as agents for a spreading cancer that was spreading in Europe. But Muhammad was much smarter, much more clever than Adolf Hitler. He set up a religion that would be self-perpetuating, using the worst elements of human nature, the desire to conquer, to rob, to loot, to rape, to enslave. These all became the reward system of Islam. And any Muslim that wants to debate me on this, I'm happy to have that debate. And I'll use the Quran and the Hadiths in the debate. And what this does is forces these Muslims to either say, you're right, that does sound pretty evil, maybe I should rethink my faith, my belonging to this faith, or it forces them to say, that's right, you got it, you outed us, we're going to conquer you one way or the other. But don't let them just slide in with this pretense of Islam is peace, Islam is just another religion. It's not. Islam is a conquest strategy camouflaged as a religion. That's how it gets through, by lying about its intentions. And we're seeing it all happening today. And keep the faith, brother, and don't submit.
You found it. It's the real news with your